So we do have one legalized drug. It's called alcohol, and it's marketed everywhere. When I'm watching football, it comes on at halftime. Guinness, Smirnoff vodka, whatever it might be. Do you, do you think we should completely avoid that type of market?
Yeah.
But
I think one of the things that we would advocate for is to almost like learn from how we got it wrong with tobacco and alcohol,
yeah,
in harm associated, and just the power that um those big companies, big alcohol and tobacco companies have on lobbying, on advertising, and so on. And
yeah,
we know obviously it's not they've tightened up on the tobacco industry in particular in relation to advertising and so on. But alcohol, yeah, it's still this kind of huge behemoth of marketing and advertising and PR. And like you say, yeah, with football, and also there's thinking of gambling as well. And obviously that's sort of, but in football, just as huge amounts of money associated with gambling, advertising, and so on. So yeah, I think we need to learn from those. And at Transform, we're advocating for quite tight regulation.
right.
For yeah,
Yeah, I think it's so important because ultimately, with a free market capitalism, there's a massive profit incentive, and with that, companies obviously want to drive up revenues, increase their profits, and that means expanding their target market and increasing the amount of people that would take the drug. So
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think that measured approach is so important. I I I think another worry is when an industry becomes a behemoth like alcohol or tobacco, it almost gets too big to get reeled in because
yeah,
once the money starts talking, um, you get lobbying as you discussed, you get politicians on board.
yeah.
Yeah, how do we keep this out of a drug market?
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, it exists a little bit in North America and other places where these big multinational companies control the market. And with Canada, because they already had, and a lot of jurisdictions that legally regulate cannabis already have medically available cannabis, and those companies um, can sort of swoop in and take over. But I think one way of going against it is limiting the size of companies that can get licenses.
Mm,
You can't you can't have giant multinational companies giving preferential treatment to things like cooperatives, social clubs, cannabis social clubs like they have in Spain, and also I think requiring companies who are coming into this emerging market to be transparent about who owns them, how much they spend on lobbying, and so on. Yeah, I think that those are just some of the measures, but I think it's really important um, that they're put in place from the start. And actually, one of the interesting things about the US is the federal ban in the US on cannabis. So we're in this weird situation where lots of states have legally regulated cannabis, and yet there's still a federal ban. And I sort of, when I first thought about it, thought, oh, that must be a bad thing. But actually, in some ways, it allows states to do it their own way without multinational companies coming in and just kind of taking over the market in every state.
right.
So it actually makes it difficult to access finance and things like that. So in a way, that serves, and I'm not saying that's the solution to federally ban something and then legalize it at sort of regional level. But I know that drug policy campaigners in the US are actually worried about if legislation does remove the federal ban, what it will look like and how it will, will it have social equity built in? Will it limit the size of companies and so on? Because they fear big multinational, you know, gigantic behemoth companies coming in and taking over the markets in individual states.
Yes, yeah, it's quite a concerning problem. It's something I hadn't really thought of, to be honest, until I listened to a TEDx talk quite recently about um someone making the argument against regulating cannabis, and all those issues were listed off to do with, I guess, free market capitalism and the way
Yeah,
companies yeah, unfortunately end up taking the piss a bit. What
yeah. And what you said earlier, actually, so what you said earlier about uh, alcohol advertising and the profit incentive. I can't remember the exact figure, but the most the people who give the most profits, it's like a huge proportion for alcohol companies are a small percentage of users who use a lot, basically. So there's a kind of small percentage of people who obviously drink a lot, who give something like 40% of the profits to alcohol companies. So the marketing approach isn't just, oh, let's try and get as many people as possible to drink a bit. It's let's really try and encourage the people who use alcohol the most to use it even more, which obviously in itself is problematic.
Yeah, I think there's some really tricky tactics, like really nasty slide tactics they use it. And going back to football, everything goes back to football with this world, unfortunately. I saw an advert as Bet365, and for me, I kind of see the gambling industry in a similar light to the tobacco and alcohol industry in terms of it can be very damaging to people's livelihoods. And for the last 30, 40 years, they've been promoting their product, promoting it nonstop. Now they promote it, but in the actual 30-second advert, they're almost telling you to, I guess, limit your use. And they're trying to tell you not to gamble when if you're depressed or if you're in a bad state of mind. It's such a weird, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me, because ultimately they want you to use their product. But at the same time, they're trying to be ethical.
Exactly.
And I don't know. It's
their profit models. I don't know exactly for gambling, but I every now and then bet on football through Bet365 or one of the other apps, but it's probably £5 a month on average or something. There's no way I am one of their target customers. Their target customers are people who maybe have problematic gambling and want to bet regularly, and they're even if they kind of shield their intent under these positive messages that they're required to do, that their target are the people who bet regularly, because that's where they get it. So